Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Did everyone get caffeinated? Yep. I hope so. Good. I want some interactivity in this session. Please don't fall asleep. All right, so I'm Brian Sanderson. I'm a Surface Black Belt. And I'll tell you a little bit more about my role at the end if we have time during Q&A, because I want to make sure I save as much time to go through my material as I can. So the first thing I want to do is talk about my agenda. So today I'm first going to kick off with a little Akadaka to really get your blood flowing. How many of you have seen our AC/DC video? Great. No one has seen it. A few have seen it. This is going to be awesome because no one else has seen it. So I'm going to show you that, and then I'm going to introduce Surface Pro 4, and I'm going to talk about some of the things that we've done in building Surface Pro 4, deep dive into some of the challenges that we faced in building Surface Pro 4, as well as what we solved from Surface Pro 3. And then I'm going to take a little bit of a step back and explain Microsoft's commitment to building devices, what we've done in our headquarters in Redmond to support designers getting together and iterating on the things that they have in their heads and their ideas. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about some of our accessories. It's a natural place to start to talk about those. Then I'm going to jump back over and talk about Surface Book, dive deep into some of the challenges in building our first laptop. And then I'll open it up for Q&A. But I want it to be as interactive as possible during the session. So if you have a question that's really relevant to what we're talking about, feel free to raise your hand, ask me the question, I'll repeat them. And if it's a gnarly question that you really want to stick me with, that's okay, but please wait till the end during the Q&A, because I might use my black belt skills and deflect you to go down to the speaker lounge, and I'll answer those questions, some of them down in the speaker lounge. But I promise I will answer any question you ask me. Okay? I might deflect it, but I will give you an answer. All right. So I want to hear everyone yell out what you love about Surface Pro 3. More. Awesome. The pen, the screen, it's light, it's not Apple. Anything else? What do you love about Surface?
Portable.
It's portable. How many of you have a Surface Pro device? Awesome. Kick ass. All right. Let's introduce Surface Pro 4. Ready? Let's hit it. Gets me pumped up, doesn't it? I actually planned this entire presentation around that video. I wanted it to be the first video, so it was. So it pumps me up. Hopefully it pumped you up. All right, let's talk a little bit about what we did when we were designing Surface Pro 4. We really wanted to start with the soul of Surface Pro 3. So all those things that you thought of that you maybe didn't yell out, but some of you did yell out, I heard a few things about the magnesium design, the XY dimensions, the kickstand, the 3:2 aspect ratio, the compatibility with existing power supplies, docks, adapters, et cetera. We've actually, and I can literally say I've spoken to hundreds of customers and got feedback from all of them on what they would change about Surface Pro 3. And I feed that feedback back into the product team, and they sit down and they figure out, well, what are we going to do for Surface Pro 4? We've got all these users that really love these things in Surface Pro 3, so that's what we're going to start with. The soul of Surface Pro 3 is where we begin. So this is Surface Pro 4. So what do? We made it faster, thinner, lighter, stronger, quieter, and more secure. We significantly increased the processor performance. We went from Haswell to Skylake. We doubled the maximum memory and storage capacities. You all told us 8 gigabytes wasn't enough. You wanted 16 gigabytes. So now we have 16 gigabytes. You told us 128 gigabytes isn't enough. So now we're giving you 256 or 512, and in some cases even a terabyte SSD. We also dramatically improved the performance of the SSD, or the I/O. We went to an NVMe PCIe-based SSD that gives up to 3 times the throughput. So any of your applications that were disk-bound, bound by the speed of your SSD, you're going to see dramatic improvement in those applications on Surface Pro 4. We also managed to make it lighter and thinner. So we've gone down from 800 grams in Surface Pro 3 to 786 grams in the i7 and i5 SP4s, and 766 grams when you remove the fan, because the Core M version doesn't have a fan. It's a little bit lighter. We also slimmed the device down to 8.4 millimeters. So previous to Surface Pro 4, the thinnest device we had ever launched was the Surface 3. Surface Pro 4 immediately took its place as the thinnest tablet, the thinnest surface. We also strengthened the glass. We moved from a strengthened glass product to Gorilla Glass 4. That allowed us to move to a thinner glass and still be stronger. We also improved the speakers. We made them 40% louder than Surface Pro 3. And a lot of customers, I'm sure some of you in the room, really complained about our rear focus camera. Our rear camera being not autofocus, it was a fixed focus camera. How many of you had problems with this fixed focus camera? You couldn't scan business cards, you couldn't scan documents, you couldn't scan your checks to deposit them in your bank accounts. If you were schools, you were using the rear camera to take pictures for science projects. You couldn't use it because it wasn't autofocus. We've gone in and improved the rear focus. It's now 8 megapixel and it's autofocus. It's the same camera that's in Surface 3. We also have a Microsoft custom designed IR camera that supports Windows Hello. We custom designed this front-facing IR camera specifically to work with Windows Hello. It's very fast. If you were attending Milad's session earlier, you saw it was only 2 seconds, and I'll be showing a demo at the end if we have time. Logging in with Windows Hello, it's very easy. It takes about 2 seconds or less. And then we also managed to extend the battery life from 9 hours to 10 hours. So now we have the best Surface Pro yet. It's 30% faster than Surface Pro 3 from a CPU perspective. It's 40% faster from a GPU perspective. We've increased the display from a 12-inch screen to a 12.3-inch screen. So the XY coordinates, or the dimensions of the device, are exactly the same as Surface Pro 3. But we removed the Windows button, and we've shrunk the bezels. So now we have a 12.3-inch display fit inside what used to be a 12-inch display. We've also increased the resolution of that display. So we went from a 216 pixels per inch display to a 267 pixels per inch display. This completely blows away Retina. Now I want to dig a little deeper and dive into some of the challenges. And the number one thing I want to talk about first is our hybrid cooling system. So a lot of you raised your hand. I think practically the entire audience raised their hand when I talked about Surface Pro 3. I'm actually using a Surface Pro 3 up here for the display. How many of you noticed that it sometimes gets quite warm to the touch on the back of the device? Or maybe you had your end users complain that, hey, it kind of gets warm. Well, the reason why is because on the back of the display, right on the right side, which is what this picture is over here on the left, that is where the heat sink is. The CPU is on this right here, is right over here. This is the CPU, the fan. So you can see these copper pipes that bring the heat from the CPU, they aren't very big. And as soon as the CPU starts to crank up and really crunch, it gets hot, and it doesn't take very long for that heat to get over to the fan and have to kick the fan on. So you felt the heat in that quadrant right behind the screen, and you heard the fan kick on pretty quickly. Those are probably I would say, the two top complaints that I heard around Surface Pro 3. Quick question.
Do you use the case as a heat sink as well? Is there any sort of thermal coupling between that to use it as magnesium to be a great dissipator?
Right, so the question is, do we use the magnesium as a heat sink? And we don't. We actually have a lot of protection in the device so that it can't get above a temperature that would actually harm you. So we do have temperature sensors on the case so that, we call it the skin, so that it doesn't get too hot to the touch. So I can guarantee when someone complains, it's too hot, it's burning up. I know that's not the case, but it does sometimes feel like it's really hot, like you could cook eggs on it. But we aren't using the magnesium for that. So on the right, you see Surface Pro 4. So you can see right away, there's a heck of a lot more copper in Surface Pro 4 than there was in Surface Pro 3. In fact, if we had not added all this additional copper, we would have been even lighter. But we still managed to add a bunch of copper and still be a lighter device. Well, let's take a deeper look at this. So what's going on here is we've also moved the processor further away. So the processor is over here, further away from the fan, and you have this big heat pipe up here at the top. This takes 40% of the processor's heat over here. That heat pipe, for you physics geeks, can manage 9 watts easily, sustained. This is why when you use the Core M version that's fanless, you'll find that we can really crank that Core M and never have to worry about heat, because we have a heat system that can dissipate all the heat that Core M can generate. So the Core M is actually quite screaming. But in order to manage the i7, how many of you bought the Surface Pro 3 i7? So you know it gets hot pretty quick. That i7 generates a lot of heat. It's using quite a number of watts. We also have this additional heat pipe that comes down here to this large copper plate. That takes 60% of the heat that goes to that plate. Now what this means is this is an isothermal design. That means that there's no hot spot. There's no one place where the temperature of the skin or the magnesium case gets superheated. The heat will now be spread across the entire back of the device. So you can imagine, instead of having one hot spot where it feels really, really hot, if you just took that and spread it across the entire back, you're going to dissipate that heat a lot faster. So now, with Surface Pro 4, you will not hear end users complain that they can cook eggs on it or fear that it's going to burn their fingers. It's generally much cooler. In fact, I'd invite you to go down to where we have Surface Pro 4 down in the expo and feel it. Those have been running all day. It doesn't take very long for them to heat up. You'll feel it's actually not hot, and it's a general warm back. This also means that that fan is not going to kick on right away. It's going to take some time for the fan to kick on. So as it is, the fan is just a little bit quieter in Surface Pro 4 than Surface Pro 3. Not appreciably quieter, but just a little quieter. But what's really going to have an impact is the fan doesn't kick on right away. It can take a lot of heat generated from the CPU before the fan has to kick in. We call this entire system a hybrid cooling system. That's because it's both passive, with those copper pipes that have liquid cooling, where the liquid evaporates and then condenses. And we have an active fan. So it's a hybrid system, passive and active. So we've done a whole lot of work on ensuring that the performance of those chips is going to be maximized, and you're really going to see it in Surface Pro 4. So what else did we change going from Surface Pro 3 to Surface Pro 4? So some of these I already mentioned. We moved from a 12-inch to a 12.3-inch screen. We went from a partially strengthened glass product to Gorilla Glass 4 that's even thinner but stronger. We moved to a 267 pixels per inch display. That's 2736 by 1824, almost 5 million pixels, just under. We increased the brightness of the display from 350 nits to 400 nits. The contrast ratio, we went from 900 to 1 to 1300 to 1. This is an awesome screen. How many of you dabble in photography? You probably know that the sRGB color space it's not very common for your monitors to be able to match the full sRGB color gamut. And in fact, we photographers tend to spend a bunch of extra dollars on our external monitors to try to get them as close to that sRGB gamut or better. You can spend tens of thousands of dollars to get Adobe RGB. But the point is that Surface screens, Surface Pro 4, and what I'm going to talk about in a minute, Surface Book, both have 100% sRGB, and they're calibrated individually at the factory. This is a big deal for creatives where color is important. Whoops, there's a few more things I wanted to talk about. Touch. We've moved now to a 5th generation touch digitizer. We support 10 points of multi-touch. We have a custom GPU-based processing that cancels all the inadvertent actuations. It cancels your palm when you're writing. And how many of you use your Surface Pro 3 to write? I didn't see a lot of hands go up. I guarantee that when you move to Surface Pro 4 or Surface Book, you're going to love the writing experience because it will always reject your palm. You will never feel that when your palm is resting on it, it's moving things around. You will love the pen experience on Surface Pro 4. And Book. We provide twice the touch accuracy of Surface Pro 3. We're doing all sorts of things to see the palms of your hands to make sure that we're improving that palm rejection. We have moved from 256 levels of pressure to 1,024 levels of pressure in the new pen, which I'll talk about in a little bit. We've reduced the latency. The latency is that experience as you're writing and the cursor is following behind. We've reduced that by 25%. If you're using OneNote, which we've worked closely with, you will not experience any latency. I guarantee you will feel like you are writing with a pen. It is awesome. If you're using other applications, some of those applications may not be quite as good because they haven't followed the stack as well. But we are working with all of them to improve their pen experience. And then parallax. Because we've changed to a screen that uses Gorilla Glass 4, we could make the screen even thinner and still be more durable and stronger than Surface Pro 3 and reduce that parallax. The parallax is that feeling you get when you put your pen on the display and you see the tip of your pen, but the inking is just a little bit off. That's the parallax. We've reduced that to a point where it's almost non-existent. You will not feel like there is a display between what you're writing on and the ink. We've also introduced the notion of pixel sense. So pixel sense is a romance of the pen, the display, and the touch, all working together in harmony. But we're saying that in order to be classified as a PixelSense display, we have to be better than Retina. We have to be at least 267 pixels per inch. Retina is somewhere around 220. So we have to beat Retina. We have to have a typical brightness of at least 400 nits. We have to have a contrast ratio of 1300 to 1. Surface Book is 1700 to 1. It beats that. We have to be 100% of sRGB color space. We have to have 10 points of multi-touch. And we have to support 1024 levels of pressure for inking. That's what PixelSense displays mean. So I'll pause right here and take any quick questions about Surface Pro 4 while I'm also displaying the technical specs comparing Surface Pro 3 to Surface Pro 4.
Question. Is there a reason to not include, say, a 4G chip within the Surface Pro 4? Because I know that that's, for a number of people that I work with, that is one of the things that they actually really like within their Surface Pros. To be able to just stick in a SIM card and bang, you've got mobile internet integrated into your device.
Okay. I'll pay you your money later for asking that question. So for those who didn't hear, he asked the proverbial question that I always get in every presentation I do in Australia, and I've been doing presentations for the last 3 weeks. This is my 4th week in Australia. I've been to every major city in Australia, and everybody asks that question. And that is, what about 4G and what about LTE? Now, when I ask them what's the experience that they're getting with 4G LTE in their other devices, I'm being recorded, so I have to be careful how I say this, but in some of those other devices that you buy because they have 4G chips that are not Surface, that have plastic in them, I hear from customers, and I would love to hear from you if this is wrong or if this is right. Tell me later. I don't want to spend too much time on this. But I hear that the experience with those devices is really quite crappy. Like the 4G doesn't hold its connection. It's kind of a weak signal. It's not as optimized as your phone or your little MiFi, Wi-Fi devices. I hear that from a lot of people. But it's not like we are saying we're not going to put LTE in these devices. It's not like we have a conspiracy against Australia. It's not like because the US has ubiquitous Wi-Fi, and we do actually, but it's not because of that we don't have Wi-Fi. It's actually because we have a magnesium chassis.
That pretty much blocks much of the signals going in and out.
Exactly. He's a physics buff. He knows that when you have a metal surrounding, you create essentially a Faraday cage, and it's hard to get signals in and out. So you might ask, what about Wi-Fi? How did you do that? Well, if you look at the very top of the device, there is a plastic strip right on the top of the device. And that's what lets the signal for Wi-Fi in and out. But there's another piece to the puzzle, and that's the fan. We have a fan in our devices, and when that fan spins, it creates all kinds of EM radiation, radio waves, EM noise, and that interferes with LTE. So we will not produce a device until we know the LTE experience is going to be great. We know that the LTE experience is going to be great because we put a big piece of plastic on the Surface 3. And it's coming to Australia very soon. All right, any other questions? And if you want to talk to me more about the LTE question, I'm happy to, after this session is done, I'll go down to the speakers lounge in the expo, and I'd be happy to talk even deeper about the challenges of putting LTE in a Surface Pro thin metal device that's an awesome device. Any other questions before I move on? I will get to that. I will cover that. The answer is yes.
Why is fingerprint reading only available in US?
Okay. You guys you're getting ahead of me, so I'm gonna move on. I'm gonna answer that in a second. Now I want to talk a little bit about Microsoft's investment okay? I am very lucky. I feel very fortunate. My office is one building away from this giant 100,000 square foot complex that Microsoft built. I actually, when I first started on Surface, I started on the Surface Table team. And my office was in Building 87. And then they took us all out of that building and they renovated and basically tore it all down and rebuilt this amazing, just amazing facility that has CNC machines, fabrication machines, like 7 3D printers, very fast industrial 3D printers. I'm not talking about MakerBot 3D printers. I'm talking about gigantic 3D printers. Materials labs, just an amazing facility. It has the quietest room in the world. Guinness Book of World Records has come to our building and measured it. It is the quietest room in the world. Quieter than what NASA has done. Hands down, 1 decibel away from being able to hear molecules move. It is that quiet. Why would we build a quiet room like that? Because we can. Somebody told me Australians don't have a sense of humor, but that's definitely not true. Because we can. No, because we're seeking perfection. We are literally listening to every capacitor. You know capacitors make noise? They make squealy sounds. We are listening to every capacitor to make sure that it is as quiet a motherboard, as quiet a device as possible. And we put these into that room to listen. We also use that room to improve the speakers, to work with Cortana, to improve the microphone, all those things. But it's because we're seeking perfection. This facility gives us a chance to have the engineers and the designers together, iterating, literally every single day. And I have a video that I want to show you where the head of our design team is going to talk a little bit about what that's like to be able to iterate and have your design show up the next day on your desk, and then you can feel it. And that's what this investment gives us.
Part of being a designer is that you need to kind of deconstruct the world and put the elements together in a different way. There's a technical side and then there's the aesthetic side, and finding that balance. Those are kind of the ingredients that make a designer's mind. Microsoft has put a lot of resources into the development of Surface. It's one thing that we can make deep investments, but it's also a whole other thing to give a team time to develop its best talent and capabilities, right? And I think that's pretty unique in the industry. We have people from very different flavors, people who are like classic industrial designers, material designers, people with fashion design backgrounds, 3D modelers, and it's a very diverse team. In the beginning, we were all the designers in one small room, and it was filled with models, and everyone had different ideas. And at some point, we glued this kickstand on a tablet and made this model and had it there. And then we moved on with our work, and no one realized. A couple of days then passed. A designer in my team said, "Oh, that might actually be a good idea." There's this beautiful balance of being in that zone of having figured out your processes and perfected them, and then making another product out of it. So if you think of like climbing a mountain, this space here is helping us pushing the base camp higher and higher. Quality doesn't only look, it also sounds and feels. When you attach a keyboard and you hover with the surface about half an inch over it, it finds its home and then it clicks in. And the sound is the result of high quality parts clicking together. With the surfaces that we have in the last generations, they are all milled from a block of magnesium. The block that gets made has already a density and a strength. The quality comes in by really being able to manipulate any surface on that housing to engineer it into its best possible state. Once you see how stuff looks and feels and works when it's really great, you always want to achieve that. And I think when you pick up the Surface, you judge for yourself. It feels pretty good.
So having that facility really helps us iterate over and over and seek perfection in all of our devices, and probably more so than any of the other devices, although certainly it's hard to measure that. The accessories is probably the one place that gets really impacted by this capability. So first I want to talk about our new pen. So it's a little bit hard to point to pen pieces. So I actually have an entire session on Friday morning, an entire session on just the pen, the docking station, and the keyboard. I've got exploded views of the pen. I've got cutaway views of the keyboard, cutaway views of the docking station, and I will geek out with you on these three things in that session on Friday morning at 10:15. So I urge you all to come to that. I have giveaways. I will be giving away at least one type cover, maybe two type covers at that session. So please, a little plug for my session, but let's continue here. So here is the pen. So we've done a lot of things to improve the pen experience. This is our, some might say different generations. I'm gonna call it our third generation pen. We had the first pen with Surface Pro 1 and Pro 2, the second pen with Surface Pro 3, and the third pen with Surface Pro 4. We have been out there talking to a lot of customers about the experience that they had with Surface Pro 3's pen. And we've done a lot of changes based on that feedback. The first thing we did was we moved the button for the eraser from being at the bottom, where you're writing, where you accidentally hit the eraser button all the time. How many of you have had that happen to you? Yeah? So where do you think we moved the button?
Where it should be.
Where it should have been in the first place, in the eraser. And I will talk about exactly how we were able to do that on Friday. We also added a magnetic attach. So we got rid of the pen loop. Actually, I think we're still selling the pen loop for the people who love it, but I haven't seen any room with people who raised their hand and said they love the pen loop. You're going to love this. This is the magnetic attach. It's very hard to pull it off, but you can roll it and remove it very easily. Magnetic attach eliminates the need to have that pen loop. We also added click and hold for Cortana. Now, usually what people ask me over the last 3 weeks is, but Cortana isn't in Australia. But it is, as of last night, as of this week. The new builds of Windows 10, Cortana is now in Australia. Hold the button down to get Cortana. We still have click to OneNote and double click for taking a snapshot. We also have optional pen tips. So not only have we improved the writing experience and improved the pen tip for the default pen tip that comes with the pen, but we now have a kit, a nib kit, that you can get. If you buy the pen separately, it comes with the nib kit. The pen that comes in the box with Surface Pro 4 and Surface Book doesn't have the nib kit automatically. We figure most people are probably not going to use the nib kit, but for artists and designers and people that are really, really interested in getting the exact feel of their pen, they'll love the pen kit, the nib kit. It has hardness levels of H, B, and I can't remember. You remember your number 2 pencil and your number 3 pencil when you were in grammar school, and you always had to use the number 2 pencil when you filled out because it had a certain feel to it. Well, this is essentially the same kind of thing. It's a certain hardness level that gives you the feel for how that pen writes on your paper or on your display. So you have now that customization capability. We also sell the pen in multiple colors, and in honor of being in the Gold Coast, you'll be the first to know, I was given permission just the other night to say this, there is going to be a gold version of the pen coming early next year. I don't actually know for sure if it's going to be assorted in Australia, but now, as of now, since I just said this, I certainly hope it will be. But in honor of being in the Gold Coast, we have a gold pen. Yes. Not rose gold, no. Definitely not rose gold. And as somebody asked over there about the docking station, the pen is backwards compatible with Surface Pro 3. It works on Surface Pro 3, it works on Surface 3. The only difference is you don't get the 1024 levels of pressure on a device that doesn't have the 5th generation of our digitizer, because the pen and the display go hand in hand. Remember that Pixel Sense, it's the romance of the pen, the touch, and the display. The 1024 levels of pressure are only going to be in a Pixel Sense display, and Surface Pro 3 and Surface 3 don't have that. So you'll only get 256 levels of pressure in those devices. And now let's talk about the type cover. The type cover has been completely redesigned from the ground up. In fact, I learned the only thing that this type cover has in common with Surface Pro 3's type cover is this binding right here, this binder where it attaches to the bottom. Every single part, everywhere else, has been completely redesigned. We've moved from having the keys be touching each other to having separation between the keys, a chiclet-style keyboard. And we've learned that the words per minute, or the typing speed that touch typists can get with this keyboard, goes up dramatically as a result of that spacing between the keys. Your brain is able to figure out where those keys are much more easily when there's space between them. Having space between the keys also gives us the ability to add stability at every intersection of these keys. So we've actually added, and I'll talk again more in detail about that on Friday, this is actually even more stable in your lap than any other of our type covers. So it improves the lappability of Surface Pro 4. We've also moved to a glass material for the touchpad and increased the size of the touchpad by 40%. It's a 40% larger trackpad than Surface Pro 3's trackpad. So I would invite you to go down to the expo and have a feel of this. You will love the new type cover. And now the question that the gentleman asked earlier, well, what about the fingerprint reader? Because the fingerprint reader is the only way to bring Surface Pro 3 to Windows Hello. And we put in the video down in little fine lawyer speak that it's US only. I assure you that was not a conspiracy. We sometimes don't know how well something is going to be received. Surprise, we can't see the future. We weren't sure because fingerprint readers in the past have been really not well received. The ones where you have to swipe your finger 10 times and you just give up and type your password because it never does accurately read your fingerprint. You know what I'm talking about, right? This fingerprint reader, and I actually have one I'll pull out. Takes a picture. So it is actually very fast and very accurate. Again, I will go into more detail on Friday. As far as coming to Australia, the demand has far exceeded our wildest imagination in the US. And I have been working with the program manager, or the product manager, who happens to be an Aussie. And we are going to make sure that this comes to Australia. I can't say exactly when, especially since I'm being recorded, but if you come down to me in the speaker lounge, I'll give you some more hints. It will come. I can promise. Very good question. So the question is, what about colors with the fingerprint reader? Anybody have a guess as to why we can't do colors with the fingerprint reader? It's because we can't put paint over the top of this camera. It has to be black. So that's a challenge. We'll figure it out, but for now it just comes in black. The reason is mostly because we figured it would be an enterprise play, and most enterprises just go with black and don't buy the colored versions. But give feedback to your ADR. Let us know what colors you would like to see it in. We'll see what we can do. No promises on the colors. Question? Yes, absolutely. All the accessories I'm talking about, the pen, the docking station, which is up next, and the type cover are all compatible with Surface Pro 3 and Surface Pro 4. All right, the docking station. So how many of you bought the clamshell, snap-in, grab, Darth Vader thing that holds onto your Surface Pro 3? It's an awesome device. But there's some things that we heard from feedback from people is it only holds the device at a certain angle. I can't use my kickstand. I can't write on it. It doesn't fit on my desk very well. It's huge. So we decided to come up with a new docking solution that eliminates some of those problems. So this is the new docking solution. Now, I don't actually have the power supply hanging off of this, which would be about the same size as this. The idea is it would sit on the floor. I would encourage you to go down to the expo to feel one of these. I would pass it around, but by the time it would get to the end, it would probably be 5 o'clock. So we'll hold off on passing it around, but I'll urge you to go feel one at the expo. It's heavy. It is quite heavy. It has some weight in it, because the idea is that this should sit on your desk and not move. The cable, which has been nicely Velcroed together here, it took 2 years to come up with a cable supplier that could provide the wire and the cable to give the right feel that the designers wanted for this docking station. Yeah, and I asked, did I hear that right? Was it really 2 years? Yes. They went through a lot of different suppliers to find somebody who could come up with a cable that is this flexible, not too thick, but is capable of having all the signal of the display port, the USB, all the data things that comes over this come without any problems. Low impedance cabling. It has 4 USB 3 ports. They are not colored blue because we wanted them to fade into the background and not be a distraction. So it should sit on your desk. It should not be cluttered and should just sort of fade away that you don't even know it's there. And your device can be at any angle that you want. You can use it to write with and still be attached to your docking station. And it is compatible with Surface Pro 3. The reason why the audio jack is on the back is because it's predominantly going to be your speakers that are sitting on your desk. I understand that some people have headphones. That's a bit of a challenge to figure out who's going to have speakers, who's going to have headphones. I'm sure it was a bit of an arm wrestle. But ultimately, this is a docking station that you come to, sit down, your desk is already set up. I know that there are activity-based work style. Australia is probably the #1 country for activity-based work style. We are actually adopting it at Microsoft. It's moving heavily across the world, where you have everything at the desk and you come in and nothing is yours and you sit down and you probably have your headphones. That's great feedback. I'll take it back to our design team to think about that. I don't actually know what ultimately made them choose which way, but I'm sure it had something to do with the speakers that we all tend to have on our desks. Question in the back?
Can you still use the mini DP on the Surface as well as the 2 on the back?
Yes, for Surface Pro 4, the answer is yes. There is a lane for DP to the port on the Surface Pro 4, as well as another lane for DP that goes through the docking station. And one thing I want to underscore, there are 2 mini DisplayPort outs, so you don't have to futz with DisplayPort daisy chaining anymore. You can if you want to, but most of us don't want to deal with that anymore. And this has a built-in MST hub that takes care of that.
But it doesn't work with Surface Pro 3?
It does. It does work with Surface Pro 3.
So you can use the 3 DisplayPorts on Surface Pro 3 as well?
Yes. Yes. And gigabit Ethernet.
I think that question was, can you use the DisplayPort on the Surface plus those 2?
Yes, you can. Yes. However, for a total of 3 displays, including the Surface display. That's an Intel limitation in terms of native displays without going to USB displays. All right, I need to move things along a little bit. I'm starting to bump into my time, so I want to move on. We're going to talk about Surface Book. So I have a video. Don't worry, it's not AC/DC this time. It's a little more calm, but please don't fall asleep. So how many of you actually saw the presentation that would have been in the middle of the night for you? It was in New York City, where Panos Panay got up on stage and revealed Surface Book. Maybe watched the video afterwards. All right, that moment, believe it or not, this is a true story. That moment was foreseen more than a year ago, when Panos came into the room to see what the designers and engineers were pitching to him around building a laptop. He said, I know exactly how that's going to look on stage. I know exactly what I want to do. And they worked backwards from there to achieve that. It's hard to believe that, but it's true. I don't know if we'll ever be able to pull this off again and keep it secret, but we did it this time. So when we set out to build a laptop, and by the way, why did we build a laptop? Because we got lots of feedback that people love Surface Pro 3, but there are times when they really want a classic laptop. They want the full lapability of a laptop, or the larger screen experience of a laptop, or the battery life of a laptop, or the performance of a laptop. So we set out to build the ultimate laptop, but it couldn't be just a laptop. It had to be a laptop worthy of its name. And when you build a laptop, there are several fundamental things that you have to get right out of the box. The first thing you have to get right is the screen. You have to have a great screen. We put together the absolute best screen, hands down, out there today. It's a 13.5-inch diagonal, 3:2 aspect ratio, 3,000 by 2,000 pixels, 267 pixels per inch, 1,700 to 1 contrast ratio. Unbelievable in a laptop screen. And 100% sRGB. This is the perfect laptop for photographers. I'm a photographer, in case you didn't figure that out. We created the best screen possible in a laptop. But that's not all you have to have a good laptop. You also have to have a great keyboard and a great trackpad. So we put 25 years of Microsoft experience building keyboards into this keyboard. This is probably the best keyboard Microsoft has ever made. We also went and got a silky smooth glass trackpad that supports 5 touch points, has inadvertent actuation or palm rejection built into it, and is 80% larger than Surface Pro 3. That's twice the size of Surface Pro 4 if you're doing your math in your head, because it was 40% bigger for Surface Pro 4 from Surface Pro 3. It's a huge trackpad. Here's what it looks like. How many of you have not yet gone down the expo and not yet felt a Surface Book? All right, I won't shame you, I will urge you to go experience this and detach the device and feel it. Because the other thing we have to have in a great laptop, it's not enough to have a great keyboard and a great trackpad and a great display. You absolutely have to have the performance behind it. It has to be performance. It has to have the top of the line processors. It has to have cutting edge technology from Intel so that we can be as fast as possible. We're using low power DDR3 RAM in 8 GB or 16 GB. That same NVMe PCI-based SSD I talked about with Surface Pro 3, also in Surface Book. But the one thing here that is the biggest hurdle for us, the biggest challenge, is the single-sided PCBA. Now, I have to admit I had no idea what that was. I had to go ask somebody, what is a single-sided PCBA? How many of you know what it means, a single-sided PCBA? A few of you. And you probably know that that is pretty darn hard to build an Intel board that's single-sided. So that's the printed circuit board assembly, PCBA, printed circuit board assembly. We went to Intel, and they told us it can't be done. You can't build a single, don't even bother, the performance is going to suck. You have to have double-sided. But we went and we built a single-sided, we showed it to Intel, and they said, oh my gosh, this is faster than pretty much everybody else who's built or reference design on Skylake. They were very impressed. Now, you're probably sitting there going, well, what's the big deal about a single-sided PCBA? Well, the big deal is that's what allowed us to get super thin on the display. Because keep in mind, this is a detachable. So the display is your computer. The display is also a tablet. Everything is in the display. Except the discrete GPU. Who has ever seen a detachable that has a discrete GPU? I know there's no hands going up because it doesn't exist. No one has ever built a detachable with a discrete GPU except we did it. Now, we did need a little bit of help from Windows 10, which is why you can't run Windows 8.1 on Surface Book. It's certainly one of the reasons. But we knew that this had to really perform. And now that we could put the discrete GPU in the base, we went with NVIDIA. We have dedicated, that should say 1 GB of GDDR5 memory in the base. It's a custom GeForce GPU. A lot of people ask us, well, what's the part number? Come on, what's the part number? And if you go to iFixit, I'm sure some of you already have, you probably found they're guessing what the part number is. But you can't base the performance of this device based on the part number because we went to NVIDIA and we worked very closely with them. We custom designed some of these things to overclock a little bit. We are taking the best advantage of these chips as you can possibly. So if you did know where we started, it's nowhere near the performance of that. So it defies classification. That's why we don't tell you.
What would be, if you were going to compare it with an existing product range?
If you come down to the speaker launch, I'll go into even more detail on that topic. I know that a lot of people are like really wanting to know, but the thing is, if we told you that number, you'd immediately slot it into a specific place where it belongs in performance measurements compared to other devices, and we know that it's far better than where that might make you think. So we're going to leave that to the benchmarkers to find out, but I would challenge you to put it through its paces and tell us, where does it fall in performance? Because I think it's going to knock your socks off. All right, so we knew from that day one when Panos Panay said it's got to be a detachable, and I want to detach it on the stage for the first time, and no one's going to see that detach until then. I mean, there was actually a time, Malad can vouch for me, that even we weren't in, those of us who were in the inner circles who could see Surface Book before anybody else, we weren't even supposed to be able to detach it. Of course, how can you test it? So that kind of didn't completely stay that way, but there were times when only Panos is going to ever be the first to detach it. However, there are a few challenges when you build a detachable. One of them is the weight of the lid, or the top, or the clipboard. So we had to come up with a way to allow for more weight or equal weight between the top and the base. And that's where we came up with this dynamic fulcrum hinge. If you look, there's two things that are happening. If you're a physics geek, there are two things that are happening. One, the base is getting bigger by almost an inch as we unroll that hinge. So we now have a bigger base to hold the weight, and the center of gravity is moving closer to the tabletop, or it's moving down. You can see it's moving from that position and moving down. So making the base bigger, moving the center of gravity down, we're much more balanced. We can take more weight in the clipboard and balance it so it won't tip. And that's why we had to invent this dynamic fulcrum hinge. We also had to invent some other things because we needed to have a really high-speed connection between the base, where the GPU is, and the CPU. So we expanded we call it Surface Connect. We expanded that now to 80 pins. It's 100 gigabits per second speed and totally reversible. So you can now attach the lid, or the clipboard is what we call the top, the clipboard. You can turn it around, attach it backwards, fold it back down, and use it in canvas mode. So that gives us, I think I'm just a few slides ahead of myself. This is the base. So you can see we're using all the space in the base. That middle part that looks gray is actually the touchpad. You've got batteries on the left and the right, and you've got the discrete GPU up at the top. The base has its own thermal system to dissipate heat. If you look at the base back here, the venting for the heat is right back here. It's hidden. You really don't see it until you look for it, but there's venting back here. That's what's venting the heat that's generated from the GPU, completely independently of the heating system for the top, for the clipboard. From a battery life perspective, the clipboard has 3 hours of battery life. The base has 9 hours of battery life. And we have an algorithm, a heuristic, where we call it save the top. We always want the clipboard to be ready to go for you to use. So when you're connected to power, we make sure that the clipboard is charged first, and then we charge the base. When you're disconnected from power, we discharge the base first, and then the clipboard. And I'll talk about in just a second why that's important.
If you're not connected into mains power, will the base charge the clipboard?
Good question. So the question is, if you're not connected to mains power, will the base charge the clipboard? The answer is no. We never transfer energy from battery to battery. That's very inefficient. And there's a lot of physics around that. It's not a good idea in this case, so we don't do that. All right, so the last thing I want to talk about is the muscle wire detached mechanism. So because we have a discrete GPU in the base, and because we have other accessories in the base, you can't just detach the clipboard and run off. It's kind of like taking the engine out of a 747 while it's in flight. It doesn't end well. If you're using an application that's using that GPU, you don't want to just have a detached, rip the GPU out from under the application. That would certainly cause some catastrophic results. So we combined both a software-based and a hardware-based detach mechanism. Now, I've certainly read some articles about, well, why do you have to push a button and power on, like, why do you have to do that to detach? No other detachable does that. Well, no other detachable has a discrete GPU either. We also want to make sure that when you go to detach, that we're kind of looking out for you to make sure there is ample power in the clipboard that you can actually go and do something rather than have the clipboard go immediately, oh, you have 7% battery left. That would not be desirable either. So when you push that detach button, there's a couple of things that go check. Are we using the discrete GPU? And we thought about, well, maybe we should just rip it out. If they say detach, we'll just rip it out and whatever happens, happens, and they'll learn. But that wouldn't be great. That wouldn't be great for you. So what we do is we pop up a little piece of toast that says, hey, by the way, you're using the GPU. Maybe if you're using FreshPaint or something that's using that discrete GPU, and it's probably not a good idea to detach, so we're not going to let you. So then you can go close the application, stop using the GPU, and then hit the button again. It will turn green. Then you can detach quite easily. So that's the reason we have a detach mechanism. We're looking out for you. And the way it works is muscle wire. When you apply energy to the wire, then it releases. So it's holding on to the base when there's no power applied to the muscle wire. When the muscle wire is energized, as you see this repeatedly, then it will release. And yes, if you're strong, you can rip that thing out. It's hard, actually. But there's nothing we can do if you really, really want to rip it out. You can tear it out. But that's not what it's been designed to do. Back in the back.
Look, we've all experienced the USB, unload. You go, nah, don't want to unload it now because something's running. Is there a way of actually identifying what's running so we can shut it down?
Our toast will tell you. Our toast will tell you. Yeah, this application is currently running and using the discrete GPU, so we can't detach. So then it's up to you to then go close it. We did think about closing it for you, but we thought that probably wouldn't be a good idea either. So it does tell you what is using the GPU and invites you to go deal with that if you really wanted to detach. And so this is the slide I was kind of ahead of myself with. These are the two canvas modes for people who are really wanting to draw or write. You can use the clipboard alone. You get 3 hours of battery life. You can plug the clipboard into power. There is a, all right. This was going to be a demo, but I think I'm running low on time on demos. So you can plug the power supply into the bottom here and power the clipboard alone. You can plug the docking station into the Surface Connect in here and also use the docking station as well. So you can make use of the clipboard quite easily. And by the way, the one thing I definitely want you to go out of this room with is knowing that this is the thinnest at 7.7 millimeters and lightest Core i5 or Core i7 ever made, PC ever made. Thinnest and lightest Core i5, i7 PC ever made. Here are the technical specifications, so I'll pause on this screen to answer any questions about the book in the back.
How many cycles is the muscle wire rated to?
Good question. I don't actually know the answer to that. I do know that we do an extensive amount of durability testing to make sure that these devices are going to last. That's a great question. I just don't know the answer. I'm sure it's a lot.
What happened that gap between the keyboard and the clipboard? Does that create a weakness itself by having that air gap, sort of pressure on the glass, etc.?
I'm not sure I understand the, right. So the teardrop design. is the question. This gap right here? All right. So this actually, there's a couple of reasons for that. One is because the fulcrum, the dynamic fulcrum hinge, needs to uncurl. The other is, if you look in there, we're not pressing any keys. You know why that's important? It's important when we're actually flipped around in canvas mode, so you can be holding onto the device in canvas mode and not be pressing keys on the keyboard. So if you look in there, there's no keys. There's no keys being pressed.
Has there been no test done to see, like obviously if it's sitting in your bag, in your backpack, and you and the child decides to sit on your backpack, how much pressure you can put on it before that mechanism breaks?
So the question is, has there been tests done to find out just how much pressure you can put on that before it breaks? Yes, there's been tests done to find out just how much pressure you can put on that before it breaks. I don't know what it is, but there are certainly going to be kids that might jump on it, and there's nothing we can do. I mean, the problem is that we can't account for cars running over it or things like that. But in an everyday usual use, I've been putting this in my backpack in the very back, and believe me, that 7-kilogram limit they have here in terms of carry-on baggage, I've been putting that a little bit to the test. And I've been stuffing things again, and I haven't had any problems. I don't think you're going to have any problems. We have done durability testing. It's not something that we typically share out there for various reasons, but it is durable and it will last. It will last the test of time.
You put it in the backpack. When you pull it out, is the pen still attached?
Yes, yes. Good point. I'm glad you mentioned it. The pen also has a magnetic attach to the clipboard. It's actually even stronger, I think, than Surface Pro 4. It really snaps in there.
Would you carry it by the pen?
I will not do that. If I detached it, maybe, but I'm not going to try that. I have attempted that on occasion, and it does work. But I'm just going to snap to my final. So my demo was the detach and Windows Hello. Please come down to the expo to see those demos. Be happy to show you them. There are lots of people working in our booth. I'll go down to the speaker lounge immediately after this, answer any questions for as long as there's people from this session asking me questions. I have to do these compulsory slides, and then I'll do general Q&A. We have a Surface Tech Center we have a Surface Tech Center. If you type it in to Bing, Surface Tech Center, it will take you right there. We have the IT Pro Bulletin that you can sign up for on the Tech Center. It's our first proactive bulletin where we tell you there are updates instead of relying you to go figure it out on your own. We tell you what's coming, what's being fixed. It's awesome. It took us 3 years to get there, but we're finally there because we love you, all IT pros. We have an IT Pro blog that's getting better and better, has awesome content in it now, and we're also part of Microsoft Mechanics. And I'm supposed to also tell you to please complete your session evaluation, and then here's Q&A. Back in the back.
Do you need power to the base to do the release?
You mean AC power?
Yeah, just on the
No,
base.
no. You don't need AC power to release the base. The TT. Oh, if it's completely flat, yeah, you can't detach if it's completely flat. You need a little bit of power. It's got to do that check. And it doesn't want to release the clipboard if there isn't, I mean, if it releases the clipboard and there's no power, first of all, it has to have power to release it because it's the muscle wire, but if there's no power in the clipboard, it doesn't do you any good to be released because you don't have any power in the clipboard. So it's doing that check.
Can you go 16 gig of RAM without going i7 the top specs in other areas?
Good question. I should know the answer, and I don't know the, you're talking about book?
Yep.
There's a chart here that says no. There are no i5 16 gigabyte SKUs. I think that's correct.
The book, I've been in the expo, I've played with it, it's draw-worthy. Why is it such a fingerprint magnet?
Interesting question. I think in order to get really bright screen, you want to not have any kind of matte finish. So to get that 1700 to 1 contrast ratio, You're going to have a really bright screen, but you are going to have some fingerprints that you need to wipe down every once in a while. Say that again? I would recommend a screen protector if that's something that works for you, that has an oleophilic film. But that's good feedback. I'll definitely bring that back to our design team to think about. How much time do I have for questions? I'm not really aware of what time it is. I've got 5 minutes. Excellent.
So the model without the GPU,
Uh-huh.
does that mean, so if you got that model, or is there an option maybe later that new base would become available with better GPUs or better battery life or something like that that would be interchangeable, or is that base locked to that model?
So that's a great question, and the question is, essentially, will we be selling the base separately so that you could perhaps upgrade later from the base without the GPU to a future product that may have the base with the GPU? And the answer is, the plan of record is no right now. If you have use scenarios where you see that your company would really benefit, and I don't mean you personally, because I know all of us in the room are also personally love these devices well, but if you have use scenarios, the biggest challenge is retail stores do not want to assort all these different SKUs if people aren't going to be buying them, and there probably won't be as much of a demand for those. But if there are commercial customers, your companies, who have use scenarios, like for example, I've heard of hospitals where they want to be able to, doctors move around and then dock into base stations, and there are some scenarios that might make sense. Please let us know either through your local Microsoft rep, who will then funnel it to your local Surface Ninja. We call them TSPs, technical, what do we call it? TSPs are technical solution professionals. I call them Surface technical specialists. I'm the black belt, they're the ninjas. Rowan Brooker is in the room right here. He's your Australia TSP. Will give feedback back to us on that specific thing. But right now, the plan of record is no, you can't buy bases separately.
The docking thing.
The docking thing?
Yeah.
Docking station.
Yeah, is that compatible with the Surface Book?
It is compatible with the Surface Book, absolutely, yes.
Can you click it just into the actual clipboard mode?
Yes,
or
you
right
can.
on the base?
Yes. Yes.
What do you see the refresh cycle being on the Surface Book, like yearly?
I honestly, if I did know the answer to that, I'm sure I wouldn't be able to tell you. But as a general rule, we are, from a commercial perspective, trying to get to be a little bit more predictable. When your company invests in Surface, we will have NDA conversations with you around product lines so that we prep you in advance so that you don't feel like you've been duped or anything like that. And for all the top customers, commercial customers in Australia, we did do those disclosures on Surface Pro 4. Now, the challenge, of course, is in consumer, and we have a single device that meets all needs, consumer and enterprise, right? In consumer, surprise is everything. In commercial, surprises, you don't want surprises. We don't like surprises in commercial. So we have to walk a fine line there. When the device is something that's heavily going to impact consumer, we're not going to be able to talk about it as much, or we won't be able to say as much about it, like Book, right? Book was a surprise to everybody. We did disclosures for Surface Pro 4 to over 100 customers in Australia. We did not a single person in Australia, save the product marketing manager in the country, knew about Surface Book ahead of time. So that's just going to continue to be the way it is.
Do these devices work at -20 degrees?
Great question. We do have an ambient temperature spec. Off the top of my head, I don't know exact, but I know -20 is not in that range of operating environment where we say it works. We can talk more about your needs if you do have these kinds of needs of ways that you can figure out to use the devices. I think we have time for one more question. Or none, as the case may be. I am giving away some things at the last session on Friday, but not this session.
Why the 30% price jump on the Surface 4 from the Surface 3 Infinite?
Because your Aussie dollar is weakening against our dollar, honestly, that's, I mean, I can't tell it any other way. The US dollar is really, really strong, which makes it hard. All right, thank you very much for joining me. Again, I will be doing another session on Friday.